I think Alaska cruises are about to get a lot more frustrating. And not because Alaska is getting worse or because the scenery is any less incredible, but because more people are cruising Alaska than ever before, and some of the things that make Alaska special can't simply be expanded to keep up. Which means the difference between a great Alaska cruise and a disappointing one may come down to decisions you make months before you ever step on board. Let me show you what I mean. If you're ready, I am. Let's go. For a long time, Alaska felt like one of those dream cruise destinations people talked about doing someday. The kind of trip that sat on a bucket list for years before people finally pulled the trigger. But that version of Alaska cruising is changing fast, because today Alaska is one of the largest cruise destinations in the entire world, welcoming roughly 1.7 million cruise passengers each year. And cruise lines have taken notice. We're seeing more ships, more itineraries, and even entirely new cruise lines entering the market. In 2026 alone, both MSC and Virgin Voyages began sailing Alaska for the first time. And cruise lines don't make those kind of investments unless they believe demand is going to continue growing. That's a success story, because more people are getting to experience glaciers, wildlife, and scenery that previous generations only dreamed about seeing. But there's a problem hiding inside all of that growth. More cruise passengers doesn't automatically mean more Alaska, and this is where things start to get complicated. So the challenge is that Alaska isn't a manufactured vacation experience like what you get in the Caribbean. You can't build another glacier bay, and you can't carve another inside passage through the coastline. And so the things that make Alaska special are the very things that limit how much it can grow. So when cruise demand increases, cruise lines can add more ships and sell more cabins, but the experiences people come to Alaska for remain exactly the same size they were before. There's a limited number of ships allowed to sail into Glacier Bay each day. There are still only so many seats available on the White Pass Railway in Skagway, and there are only but so many helicopters available to land on glaciers, and only so many whale-watching boats available to take guests out on the water. And that's what makes Alaska different. The cruise industry can continue growing, but Alaska's most iconic experiences aren't able to grow with it. Which means that every year, more people are competing for the same glaciers, the same ports, and the same bucket list experiences that brought them to Alaska in the first place. And here's the truth. That's where having the right people in your corner can make a surprisingly big difference, which is one of the many reasons we booked through Cruises It. In fact, my buddy Frank called me recently after using them for the first time, and the first thing he said to me was, "Okay, Evan, now I get it." I just said, "Get what, Frank?" He said, "Look, I thought travel agents just booked cruises, but I didn't realize they'd help me save so much money. And that's really just one of the things they do to help." And over the years, Cruises It has helped us save thousands, avoid expensive mistakes, and make sure we're always getting the best value for our travel budget. And with their low price guarantee, you can book knowing you're never overpaying for your cruise. So if you're planning a cruise, or even if you've already booked one in the past 30 days and you just want someone in your corner to answer questions and automatically watch for price drops, click the link in the description below or call the number on the screen and tell them Evan from Family at Sea sent you. You'll be glad you did. And the reality is, we're already starting to see signs of that tension in Alaska. A few years ago, the conversation there was largely about how to attract more visitors. But today, in some communities, the conversation has shifted toward how much growth is too much. Take Juneau, for example. On busy summer days, Juneau has seen as many as 5 large cruise ships in port at once, bringing up to 21,000 cruise passengers into a city with a population of roughly 31,000 residents. And as those numbers grew, so did the concerns from local residents about congestion, traffic, and the overall impact tourism was having on daily life. And eventually, those concerns grew large enough that city leaders and the cruise industry were forced to address them. So beginning in 2026, daily passenger counts have been capped at 16,000 on Sundays through Fridays and 12,000 on Saturdays, which is a significant reduction from the busiest days the city had previously experienced. Now, that doesn't mean Juneau is turning its back on cruise tourism. In fact, far from it. Cruising remains one of the most important drivers of the local economy there. But it does show that communities are beginning to draw lines around how much growth they're willing to accept. And as Alaska continues to become more popular, Juneau is unlikely to be the last community forced to make those decisions. So what does that mean for the future of Alaska cruising? Well, I don't think we're heading toward a future where Alaska suddenly stops welcoming cruise ships. The economic impact is simply too significant for that. But what I do think we're heading toward is a future where growth becomes much more intentional. We've already seen communities like Juneau begin placing limits on passenger volumes, and if demand continues to rise, other communities will likely eventually face similar decisions. And at the same time, cruise lines are looking for ways to continue growing without putting additional strain on the local communities. In Ketchikan, we've already seen a version of this with Ward Cove. Norwegian Cruise Line helped fund the development of the mill at Ward Cove, which is a 2-berth cruise facility built on the side of an old pulp mill several miles outside downtown Ketchikan. But the long-term idea there is not just to drop passengers at a different dock and bus them into town. Instead, Ward Cove is being developed into its own cruise destination with a welcome center, shopping, a museum, local products, and excursions built around its location near the Tongass National Forest, which gives cruise lines another way to grow in Alaska without relying entirely on the traditional downtown port experience. So instead of every passenger funneling into the same few streets in Ketchikan, more of the day can be shaped around a separate cruise-controlled gateway with its own tours, own transportation, own retail, and own guest flow. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. In Juneau, Royal Caribbean and Goldbelt have teamed up to propose a new cruise port on Douglas Island that could help accommodate future growth while shifting some passenger traffic away from downtown. And this isn't just a pier. Current plans include a purpose-built visitor destination centered around the Tlingit culture, including a recreated 1800s Tlingit village, cultural demonstrations, local art, and food. The project is also designed to connect guests directly to whale-watching tours and other experiences while reducing traffic on some of Juneau's busiest roads. In some ways, it reminds me of what we've already seen happen in the Caribbean. Not because Alaska is getting a Coco Cay style water park, but because cruise lines are becoming more involved in shaping the destinations their guests visit. And for decades, the model was simple. Cruise ships brought passengers into town and local communities built the experience around them. But the model we're starting to see now is different. Increasingly, cruise lines are helping create the ports, attractions, transportation systems, and guest experiences themselves. And if that trend continues, the Alaska cruise experience of 2035 may look very different from the Alaska cruise experience we know today. But the reality is that Alaska hasn't become harder to enjoy. It's just become a destination that rewards preparation more than ever. So the biggest adjustment I would make is planning farther ahead than you normally would. In most cruise destinations I've visited around the world, I've typically found that you're able to book excursions in the last couple of weeks leading up to your cruise, and you'll still have plenty of great options available. But Alaska doesn't work that way. If there's a helicopter tour, glacier landing, train ride, or whale watching excursion that's important to you, book it as early as you reasonably can, because Alaska's most sought after excursions sell out months before the cruise ever departs. And the same thing applies to the cruise itself. Waiting until the last minute might save money, but it can also mean missing out on the itinerary you really wanted, the glacier experience you were hoping for, or the excursions that made you book the cruise in the first place. I'd also spend more time choosing the itinerary than choosing the ship itself. In the Caribbean, the ship is often the star of the show, but in Alaska, the itinerary matters more. And one other thing to keep in mind, the people who make the best memories in Alaska aren't necessarily the ones who spend the most money. They're the ones who decide what matters most to them and make those decisions before everyone else does. But here's the bad news. As Alaska continues growing in popularity, the number of decisions that can make or break your experience is only getting bigger. The good news, after years of cruising Alaska, I've finally put together my dream Alaska cruise experience. The exact cruise line, cruise ship, itinerary, glacier experiences, and excursions that will help you make the most of your Alaska cruise. So don't stop here, watch that video next, and I'll show you exactly how I'd plan an Alaska cruise to get the absolute best experience possible. I'll see you over there. If you're ready, I am. Let's go.